Jack of all trades, but master of none. I don't really like that saying because I think it implies that folks who are able to do a lot of different things really never are great at any one of them. And I just don't think that's the case. Because the truth is, nearly every composer I know doesn't just compose. In fact, it's much more common that we each find ourselves cobbling together a career from many different aspects of the industry, from writing to arranging to gigging to teaching. So today, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about the various ways that I personally make money making music. Plus, we're going to take a listen to a cinematic pop vocal cue. You heard that right, a vocal cue written by a member of the 52 Cues community on this week's episode of the 52 Cues podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Cues podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and take deep dives into the different aspects of being a working production music composer. Plus, we feature a cue written by a member of the 52 Cues community, and this week, we're going to be taking a listen to Limitless, which is a cinematic pop vocal cue. Yes, the rare vocal cue. In fact, I don't think I've ever talked about a vocal cue here on the podcast. This is a cue written by Caroline Moore, so you definitely want to stick around for that. If this is your first time here, welcome aboard. I'm so glad you found me. However you found me, I know you have a lot of options out there, so thank you for spending part of your day here with me. I also want to give a special word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help keep the podcast, the channel, and everything we do here going along. We are 100% community supported, so you're not going to hear any ads for mattresses, VPNs, or meal plans. But if you want to learn more about how you can help support the 52 Cues and unlock perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, cue breakdown videos, and a ton more, then please click on the link in the descriptions or stick around because we're going to be talking all about that a little bit later in today's episode. So I wanted to kind of put my money where my mouth was, I suppose, which is talk about all of the ways that I make money making music, because it's many, many different areas. It's not just composing, just like it's not just teaching. So and these are kind of, I guess they are in order of descending payments, like the amount of money that I get paid. And so the first way that I make money in the music industry, making money making music, is teaching music. I have a full-time job. I'm a full-time music professor at Full Sail University, where I teach production music, specifically in their bachelor's degree program for music production. So I teach students how to create cues. It's what I do. It's what I teach all week long. It's what I answer emails about. It's what I write curriculum about. And not unlike, what I do here on my channel, because it's just an extension of my experience in the industry, and it pays the bills, quite literally. And so I think so many composers, have a full-time job and need a full-time job because of that security. Now, I'm the type of person where I really do need that security. I need the biweekly paycheck. And I suppose I could kind of just put myself out there and try to give like 8 hours a week or 8 hours a day to writing music. And but I don't know. Maybe I'm too risk averse for that. But I've always needed a full-time job, not just for the paycheck, but the security it brings my family, benefits, with a health plan and eye coverage and dental and 401k and health insurance, life insurance, all of those things that full-time jobs can bring to the table. Those are really difficult to try to wrangle on your own if you're just out there. And I know there are composers that do that, but I need that security, and I'm really fortunate, super fortunate, and I know this, to have a job where I'm teaching the thing that I'm doing professionally. And it's very much a hand in glove because I'm teaching students, like so many students right on the front end of their career or starting a new career, like we talked about last week with Greg, going back to school and starting up from scratch. And so I'm teaching them, but I'm also out here doing it in the industry. So things that I'm learning in the industry, whether they're from publishers or whether they're, the school of hard knocks where I'm taking my lumps and learning what not to do, all of that gets funneled directly back into my Full Sail students. What's cool, but with Full Sails, the classes are each 1 month long, so I can easily learn something new, and then within a month or two, I'm teaching it to students. Whereas if like a more traditional college, you might have 16, 17-week semesters, and you only teach the class in the fall, so you're only able to update that type of curriculum like once a year. So that can be really, really tough. But that's really, really really helpful for me, and it works so well how I can learn things and apply them directly, and it's super fulfilling. And again, I know I'm really, really fortunate in this because I'm sure there are folks listening right now who have a full-time job that maybe have nothing at all to do with music. So I reckon, and I did that. Please believe me, I did that for plenty of times. I remember being I've worked at third shift at American Express while trying to like work a music career. This was as a gigging performer. I worked at a print shop. I worked at a dollar movie when dollar movies were still a thing, right? And so if you don't know, if you're too young to remember dollar movies, you had your first run theaters. And then you had second run and third run theaters that would get the movies after they left the first run theaters, because most theaters didn't have, 50 screens. And so the movie, a movie like Toy Story would stay in the theater for several months, and then it would move to a lower tier theater to make room for new movies for the first run theaters. And so I worked at a dollar movie. It was literally, you paid $1. I mean, you were going to pay like $5 for your popcorn, but to get in the door was $1. But we cleaned with a leaf blower. I mean, we would stand at the back and we would just blow all of the trash and everything down. And so that was an adventure. Really kind of disgusting at times, but that was an adventure. I worked at a roller rink, and I worked at a networking company where I did web design. So always have had a full-time job. But even while I was doing the full-time job, I have my music kind of side hustle happening, whether I was gigging or performing or teaching, performing as well. So being able to have a full-time job in music, that is the highest wage earner for me. Absolutely the highest wage earner. So the second way that I make music or make money making music these days is actually with royalties. It's not as nearly as consistent as full-time job. I have had royalty statements as low as 41 cents, a quarterly royalty statement as low as 41 cents, but also, as high as 5 figures in one quarter. Now, you don't want to talk about getting pushed into another tax bracket and taking a $10,000 hit on your taxes. Woo! I learned that lesson the hard way. But everything in between, it's wildly inconsistent, and it's all like 1099 for taxes, right? And so you have to make sure that you are taking care of all of that. The business side of things, there are zero benefits. Like there's no insurance plan, there's no retirement, 401k, right? No health insurance. That's all on you. But you have a ton more flexibility. And I know there are some composers and some musicians who don't necessarily have that full-time job with benefits, but they still kind of cobble together their career doing these other things. But royalties right now with the libraries have amassed enough to where it's regularly Regular, and I'll go ahead and just be transparent. My last royalty check was about $9,000, right? But I've also had, $23,000 checks and 41-cent checks and practically everything in between. But it is an upward slope, right? It is increasing in general. If you look kind of year over year, it is increasing, but it just takes tons of time. Will there be a time when I make so much in royalties that I will leave teaching and drop the full-time job? I'm not sure. I mean, I enjoy teaching so much. What I'm doing right now is a direct result of my love of teaching. And I do like the benefits, and having like paid vacation and being able to like have Shannon on my insurance, right? Shannon isn't working full-time, like a full-time job. She has things she's pieced together. She's really throwing herself into 52Qs and supporting that business side of things. And she does all the design work, and she's been on the show a couple of times. And she's a music director and does like theater and church stuff, but none of that's full-time with benefits. So I'm able to bring her along onto my insurance. So I'm not sure. I wonder, if I would be singing a different tune if it wasn't Full Sail and if it wasn't a job that is so closely related to my composition stuff. I would probably be singing a different tune if I was an accountant, or like Greg we talked to last week. If it was social work, something so far removed, the Venn diagram has zero overlap of those two worlds, maybe I'd be singing a different tune. But as it is right now, and how closely related my composition work is to my teaching gig at Full Sail, I don't think so. I think I would, continue to get up early and be in the studio late and that kind of thing before I would drop one. It would have to be really, really consistently. Well, I think as I'm just processing this out loud in real time on a podcast, I think if I got to the point where I was really underserving either my libraries, or what would happen is if my composing gig got so big that I started underserving my students at Full Sail, that's when I would have to take a really sobering look at that. Like, can I actually do these things? Which is a challenge of juggling, all these bowling pins in the air. Sometimes they're bowling pins, sometimes they're golf balls, sometimes they're, chainsaws, but you're still juggling them. And as long as I'm able to keep that going, and I have been for the past several years, 5 or 6, 7, 8 years, I guess going on 8 years now, then yeah. But I think if it got so big that I wasn't able to pour into the students at Full Sail, and I owe it to them. I owe it to every student who's paid tuition, who's sitting there in a lecture, whether it's virtually or sitting there, on campus, and they're watching me, waiting for me to impart something to them. I owe it to them to give them everything I got. That's the deal. That's the academic contract that I have entered into with my students. And so if my composing royalties got so big and the need serving my libraries overshadowed that, then I would have to take a real look at it, and we'd be at a real crossroads, I imagine. But that's for future Dave, and maybe never Dave, but that's for future Dave. Right now, I don't see that necessarily happening, but we'll see. All right. So the next kind of larger, or kind of going down into descending, would probably be, I would guess, here recently would be 52Qs and serving the community at 52Qs in the form of their subscription services, that they offer. Obviously, 52Qs is free to join. You can do the weekly feedback threads and all of those things. But there's a whole other subscription tier that I pour into, thing from our friends level, which is you get access to the the weekly live streams. I've just started posting weekly cue breakdowns where I do a long form breakdown of a cue that I've written and talk about the sounds and the production process and all of that, and access to the monthly workshops. And we have one coming up in just a couple of weeks with Steve Cox, who is the music manager for Warner Brothers Discovery. And so we're going to be talking about like from pitch to placement, and how cues kind of travel that path. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks, and that's friends. That's a benefit. It's a benefit of being a friend. And then our family tier has all of that plus weekly office hours where I answer questions like in the Zoom room, and interactive feedback sessions. So it's everybody kind of getting together and listening to each other's cues, and I give video feedback in real time. And then I have mastermind groups where we get together, and it's very much more career focused, and that's a 12-week program. And one-on-one sessions, and video feedback. That's all kind of 52 cues. It all kind of gets kind of mashed together, and so that's ongoing, and it's really coming up, but it hasn't eclipsed my royalties, and I don't think it ever really will, and that definitely hasn't eclipsed full-time job because I can't give it full-time energy. Like Full Sail gets my full-time energy. As it should. They're paying me full-time to be a full-time employee. Being a composer doesn't get full-time Dave energy. 52 Cues doesn't get full-time energy. Shannon's putting in full-time energy. So if it looks like everything's really, really happening and super together, that's all on Mrs. 52 Cues over there. But I would say it would be 52 Cues and supporting that community. And being able to support ourselves, being able to support the community itself, doing this podcast, doing the video production and all the live streams and the Zoom sessions and all of that. So much of that costs money, and so the community supporters and the subscribers help with all that. So I would think a super close, I guess we're on like number 4 now. The super close to that would be studio production. I have, a production studio here. It's just a room over a garage, but I think it looks nice. It's kind of man cavey, but the family was really good. Kind of gave me this whole area to turn into a studio, and I was able to put like stuff on the walls and when I say stuff, I mean like sound reinforcement and baffles and bass traps and all of those things, and set up a drum set, and it looks really good. That's a really nice space. I'm still working on getting natural light into the room. The desk backs up to a pretty big window, like a window you'd see over a garage. But first of all, Florida, tons of heat, just barrels into here. And for sound reinforcement, I've got curtains that I keep darkening, room darkening curtains and sound dampening curtains. But I only really need to have those open or closed when I'm producing, or when it's crazy hot, or if I'm like recording a video. So right now they're closed, but I need to work on getting more natural light in here because I feel like I need a lot more vitamin D in my life. But I also, so I do some recording. Since the pandemic, I've been doing less in studio recording, even though my podcast production hasn't slowed down at all. I have ongoing weekly podcast recording sessions that I'm now doing remotely with clients who live across town here in Orlando, clients who live in Oregon. I have another podcast host who lives in downtown Manhattan. And so I'm able to use a recording service called riverside.fm. And I'll have a link to that in the show notes that you can check out. That enables us to record remotely, but we're recording uncompressed WAV files in both for audio and MP4 video, and then I can edit those together. So if you've ever seen any of the interviews that I do, usually it's not through Zoom. That's through Riverside, because that allows that to happen and to get the best possible audio. And that service came up through COVID when all the studios shut down. These services popped up that equipped folks to continue to make what they need to make. And even though, things are kind of opened up now, folks don't come to the studio anymore. My crosstown host used to come to my studio like every Monday at 7 a.m. She'd come to the studio, we record, and then she'd be done. Now, she stays in her pajamas, or I guess, she's on camera, so I guess she kind of dresses up a little bit. But yeah, she stays in her space. And over the pandemic, I equipped all of my hosts. I'm like, hey, you need to get this mic, you need to get this camera, this lighting, and all this stuff. And they've just kept doing that, which is totally fine with me, completely fine with me. And so it has enabled me to kind of transition the studio from, like, it was kind of set up to where I could shoot video, and so it was a lot of space, and it was significantly more modular, and I couldn't, set up the drum set or any of that business. But now I've been able to do that, and because nobody's really coming into the studio. But I do a ton of podcast production, which I enjoy. Which obviously, if you're listening to this or watching this, then you know all about that, and a lot of audio cleanup and dialogue editing, which also points to some of the audiobook stuff that I've done, which I'm not really doing a ton of that much anymore. Now, a few years ago, there would have been a segment of the industry that I participated in, that I actively made money, that would have been much higher up this list, and that is gigging, live performances as a drummer, as a performer. And I did a ton of this. I mean, this was my whole world, back in Memphis. I was a percussion instructor, and I head up the music department at Visible Music College and all of that. But I gigged all the time, whether it was jazz gigs, whether it was a cover band. I was in a cover band where we'd play like bars and that kind of stuff. I did a ton of theater. I love doing theater work, mostly because schlepping drums is my least favorite part of being a performing drummer. So with theater gigs, you just install once, and then you're done, right? You install once, you play for like 2 to 4 weeks, and then you load out. So one load in, one load out. And the pay isn't always amazing, but not having to schlep gear for every night, that was absolutely worth it. So when I moved to Orlando, then I really focused much more on composing, and I'd still taught for a little bit, and I started getting heavily into the gig scene, specifically the theater scene and a little bit of the jazz scene here. I played with a few jazz artists here in town, and church work, a church musician. I did a little bit of church musician work in Memphis, but I was on like a home worship team, and so that pretty much tied me up for that, and that didn't necessarily pay. But coming out here, doing paid church work, because I could read music, I could play with dynamics, and I was able to, with the church I ended up with, able to bring a drum set that I wasn't really actively using, so I was able to leave it at the church and had a weekly church gig, and I did a ton of that. Like I said, a ton of music theater. But I remember sitting in a tech rehearsal several years ago, probably about 3 years by now. With COVID, it's all just a blur, but I think it was about 3 years ago, and I was sitting in a tech rehearsal. And anybody that's done theater knows all about tech, which is just a lot of just sitting around. And it might be like a 4 or 5 hour block, sometimes even 6 hours. Right? We need you there from like 4 to 10. And so you're just sitting there, and they're ironing out lighting, and they're working on all the, sound and all the technical things. And it's not like a run through of the show. It's just painful and slow, and lots of start the cue, start the cue, start the number, stop the number, start it again, stop it. We're ironing things out. Nobody can hear. The monitors sound terrible. Oh, the mics are feeding back, and the lighting isn't working, and the fog machine isn't on cue. All these technical things. And so I was sitting there in a tech rehearsal about 3 or 4 hours in, and I had all of these other composing library requests starting to pile up, and I had the epiphany. I'm like, I could be making more money right now if I was in my studio working. Because now I'm underserving this other part of my world. And so I semi-retired. I have a handful of folks that I will work with here in town, and not for like any nefarious, like I won't work with them. No, it's just I wasn't actively going to find work. I wasn't hitting up the Facebook groups, I wasn't, sending out my number. And if I was given, if my number was given to somebody, I started turning down gigs. Last Christmas, I did big at a Garden Theater because I really like Garden Theater, and it was paying really, really well. And he called me up for the next show, that music director. I said, I just really can't. I can't do that. And so being kind of semi-retired as a performer means that gigs have kind of come down much further in the list. But I'm pouring that time and that energy that would have been taken up gigging into being a composer and into my library music and production music, to the point now that I'm not even doing a Sunday morning church gig. I'll do the spot kind of fill in here or there. Just last Sunday I filled in because the normal drummer for the church I played at was out of town. So I'll sit in, but I'm not committing to a weekly thing anymore. Because gigging it's much lower. It's much, much lower. And so because of that, it's not really, high on my list here. All right, there are a handful of other ways that I make money in the industry, make money making music. And one of those is kind of related to royalties, and that is upfront fees for production music. Now, it doesn't happen a ton because so many production music libraries, it's all on spec. So you're writing and you're hoping it gets placed so that you can get royalties. Now, I've sensed this kind of changing kind of over time, where more libraries are paying upfronts, but upfront money probably goes above gigs. Probably, I would say. If I'm looking at my little list here, I would say probably be above it. So like the work I do with Discovery has some upfront. The work I do with a handful of other libraries, there's a little bit upfront. It's not a ton, but it's just a little bit of upfront money. But anything I've ever done for CBS Sports, there's no upfront money for that. I only get paid if I get played. And so that is changing, but I did make some money in the industry with upfront fees on top of the back end royalties. Another way that I make money is through arranging. I use ArrangeMe. I think it's ArrangeMe.com. It used to be Sheet Music Plus. And if you don't know about it, ArrangeMe is a service that allows you to do arrangements of copyrighted and public domain, but they've secured the copyrights for all of these songs. And so I've done some arrangements of, I did a flute duet arrangement, or it might have been flute and clarinet, of A Million Dreams, like from The Greatest Showman. And that makes me a few bucks, every month. And I did an arrangement of Call Me Maybe, which was for woodwind trio, like bassoon, clarinet, and oboe. And that makes a few bucks every month as well. Now, this is something that I don't do a lot of. I can, it's just like I've lost count, or I've lost track of the last time I opened up, Sibelius, so I couldn't tell you. So I don't do it a lot, but that skill is there, and I get a few bucks kind of on the side. And so that's cool. I enjoy it. Every time I see you've got a commission, and it's not a lot. It's like maybe $7 or $8 for one, and then maybe like $1 or $2 for the other one, because you don't charge a ton for Call Me Maybe. And you're definitely not, it's not 50%. You're getting maybe like 20% royalties because it's a copyrighted work. But the good news is they take care of all of that. They just give you the little chunk of legalese that you have to put in the bottom, and they take care of the rest. Yeah, it's ArrangeMe.com, I think is what it is, but it's a service of Sheet Music Plus. And you can post your own arrangements and your own things up to Sheet Music Plus. I've got an arrangement of How Great Thou Art for flute that is up there. I think that might be a flute duet as well. My sister plays flute, and her daughter is an amazing flautist. And so I did a lot of little arrangements for them and then put them up there. Also did a woodwind trio of somebody that I used to know by Gautier, and I don't know if that one might have been pulled because I think they lost the copyright or something like that. But yeah, some sheet music stuff, and it pulls in a few bucks. And then finally, I would say that the last way that I make money making music would be through monetization through YouTube, but it is not a lot. It's like maybe $30 a month. I've got getting up to about 2,000 subscribers, and I'm over the threshold for monetization. But to be honest, that's not really the point of the channel at all. Monetization, because if that was the point of the channel, doing I'm now like 30 minutes into an episode, 30-minute long content, hour-long podcast episodes. No, the algorithm wants these little bite-sized little snippets, and I'm not. And I have no interest in trying to focus on gaming the algorithm to try to get as much monetized money for making income. I mean, it's cool. It definitely doesn't hurt, but I'm not aggressively trying to use YouTube as an income source. For me, YouTube is a vehicle to allow me to share. It's an extension of my teaching, and it helps bring awareness to 52Qs and everything that we're doing over there in that community. That's where like most of my non-full-time energy, full-time job energy, non-composing energy, that's all going into 52Qs. So those are like the three big, like the tent poles, the legs of the stool in how I make money. Full-time teaching, composing, and that includes royalties. And I'll go ahead and roll up like upfront fees in with that. And then 52Qs. Everything else is there, but it's just ancillary. And YouTube, it's just ancillary. I make about as much money selling sheet music for A Million Dreams as I do in YouTube, because I'm not trying to necessarily monetize. Like, I'm not aggressively doing all of the practices that all the folks who say, hey, if you want to make money in YouTube, do this. I'm not doing those things, except for thumbnails. I am proud of my thumbnails. I've upped my thumbnail game. So the last question that I have for myself is, where do I want to go? Like, what's next? Are there areas of the map that need to be filled in for me? And so I think there are three main things that I see myself getting into, and I could see being future streams of income for me. And one of those is games. I would love to get into games. Absolutely. It's something I've always just been interested in. It's something that I've wanted to do. The overlap of how you arrange production music with layers and consistent energy, and I think that goes really hand in hand with the way games are put together. It just needs to be kind of the right project and the right people. I am right now kind of working with a game developer friend of mine from Memphis that I've known for, probably 15 years by now. And we've had some near misses over time, right? Some close calls where we've tried to pull something together, but it just didn't coalesce. And that's fine. That's how it goes in the gaming industry. You get kind of a concept, a little bit of energy, and then it just kind of fizzles for, whatever reason. But we've got something going on right now, which I think might go the distance, and it will be my first completed game. Now, I've done some like giving music and recording on game projects before, but I want to do a game project, which I guess I'll say, hey, if you're interested, if you're a game developer, or if you're looking for game music, I would love to talk to you, because that's an area of the map I want to get into. I want to explore that part of the career. The other thing is custom scoring. I do a little bit, or I have done a little bit, but it's something I'd love to get much more into. But production music just takes up so much oxygen that I haven't really had a chance to aggressively pursue that, but it's something that I would like to get into. And then finally, the third way that I could see, and I feel like this is the logical progression of so many production music composers, which is getting into production music publication. Now, does that mean I'm going to start running my own label? Right? Does that mean I'm going to start running my own library? I don't know. I don't know if I have the networking chops, to aggressively pitch and all of that. But what I do know is I feel like I have a really good ear for hearing what's going to work and what's not going to work, helping bring composers along, shaping cues, educating them. These are things that were really done for me as I was coming up in the ranks of production music, talking to publishers who were educating me, like giving me a hard knocks education on form, structure, harmonic choices, melodic development. What does all that mean? Emotion, nailing the consistency of them. All the things that I teach and I do during my coaching was helped, and I was coached by publishers. And so I could see that being the next kind of step in a career. Does that mean that 52 Cues is going to be a publisher? I don't know. I'm not ruling it out. I'm not ruling it out because suddenly I have I have exposure to so many amazing composers all doing their thing, and they're essentially like posting up cues. I'm like, this is amazing. I hope it finds a home somewhere. I hope Taxi doesn't reject it. I hope it gets placed, and I hope everybody makes money making music. But that's kind of how publishers think and how libraries think. So I could see that being something that I do next. And I've waded into the very, very shallow end of that, doing some co-publishing things. But who knows? I think if I get another 10 to 15 years on this engine, of a career, I could see me going in that direction. Because, like I said, I think it's a pretty logical extension of where a lot of composers start. Because you're in the industry long enough, you eventually make connections and contacts, and you have these relationships, and suddenly you're talking to someone who is now a music supervisor, and they're like, "Hey, we need music. I like Dave, and Dave, you have access to all these composers, and can you put something together for me?" And suddenly you find yourself being a publisher. But what about you? How are the different ways that, or what are the different ways that you make money making music? And if you have a full-time job and you're composing on the side, and that's like your side hustle, what kind of job is it? And do you find can you talk about the challenges of balancing full-time job, which has nothing to do with music, and trying to bring music into the fold? I'd love to hear from you. Or if there's something that you do that I didn't even talk about, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Please let me know in the comments below. I read all of the comments, and I make an effort to answer those, or at least give them a little heart or something like that. But yep, would absolutely love to hear from you. So we're going to take a quick break, and you're about to hear a little bit from Mrs. 52 Cues. She's going to be talking about the 52 Cues community. But when we come back, we're going to be taking a listen to a cue called Limitless, which is a pop vocal cue, or a cinematic pop vocal cue. Now, I don't do a ton of work with vocal cues, quite frankly, because I'm not a vocalist, nor am I a songwriter, but she had some mixing questions, and I wanted to talk about how vocal cues can get used for sync. So we're going to take a quick break and talk about that on the other side.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52 Cues podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52 Cues isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52 Cues community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions, which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52cues.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52cues.com.
So beautiful, we are so loved. We are the originals, we are the ones. Here we go. Creeping in, building fires now that burn on every shore. We're not going to run away anymore. We're limitless, we're limitless, we're limitless. So limitless,
All right, that was Limitless by Caroline Moore. Thank you so much for sending this along. And I wanted to feature this for a couple of reasons. First of all, I wanted to help you out with your mix, but also to underscore the fact that vocal music gets used in sync. Right. In fact, I think there are some libraries which really kind of focus on this. I think like Artlist, focuses, or is it Motion Array? One of those stock libraries really focuses. And in another service, I think it's called Midio, Midio, if I'm thinking of that correctly. And it's essentially helping songwriters or producers put and publish songs that can get placed. And I also know that Taxi all the time asks and looks for songs. In fact, I think Taxi started really with songwriters, right? So the instrumental side of things and production music libraries, I think, are relatively new additions to Taxi. Its 30-year career, its 30-year history started out with songwriting. And so if you're a composer listening to this, watching this, and you write songs, just know that you can find homes for your songs on sync. It's just, for me, I don't do a ton of it. It's not anything that 52 Cues is necessarily focused on, because we focus on cues, and cues are typically instrumental pieces of music for media. But I wanted to feature this so that we could talk a little bit about songs. But just know that I'm probably not the most qualified to talk about like mix or vocal mixing and that kind of thing. But I do have ideas, and I've heard music before, so I thought I would give it a go. Coming out of the gate, the piano, well, it sounds like it might be a live piano as opposed to MIDI. And it sounds, I can't tell if it sounds far away or if it sounds like mono-mic'd. It just doesn't feel nearly full enough.
We are so beautiful.
The thing that hit me out of the gate was it sounded mono. But it doesn't sound, it's just I think it's the piano recording. So I don't know if it just needs to be brought up in the mix, EQ'd to where there's some lows, because it doesn't really, it just kind of sounds thin and flat. It just doesn't sound big enough to hold up to where we're eventually going, which is pretty dense texturally speaking. So we just I feel like the piano just doesn't really hold up. And so if that's a real piano, I wonder if you should use a MIDI piano, unless you have, paired condensers and all of that thing, where you're like a ribbon mic, or not that you have to have all that fancy business to get a good piano recording, but this doesn't really feel like it was mic'd as effectively as what we're used to hearing pianos. And so because of that, it sounds kind of demo-y. You know what I mean? It sounds like this isn't the final produced thing. This is just a demo scratch track. So and again, I hope you kind of understand my heart, and I don't mean to bag on whoever played and recorded. It's a fine performance. I have no qualms with the actual piano performance, but the recording quality, I think, is undermining. The first impression is undermining the professionalism of where this is kind of going to end up going. I think the vocals sound okay. Probably could use a little bit more reverb. Again, what's funny, I do a ton of dialogue editing and spoken word, but actually singing, so I'm gonna quit embarrassing myself. I feel like there needs to possibly be a little bit more energy here. Right, so maybe just a little. Just a little something, because this is really working, absolutely working here. I like the hook. I think it's the melody, everything is really working. I like the addition of the strings there. I think the strings could be a little crisper, maybe EQ the mids. Let's see, if I was kind of sweeping somewhere around maybe 600 or 700 hertz just in the string part there. I just feel a little dark. I like all the vocal things you got going, some stereo imaging there. Do you have, I'm noticing the guitar on the left. Do we have something on the right offsetting that? The guitar feels a little left heavy. Gong, gong, gong. So moving forward. But in general, I think all of your pulsing instruments can be crisper, and I think they could just pop out of the mix just a little bit more. Anything that's sustained, kind of pull that down a little bit in the mix, because it's feeling a little, I don't know, there's the energy isn't necessarily there. I would do some palm muting, because now that we've introduced the eighth note energy one, and we need to keep that going, because this feels like an energetic step backwards. And we do want to pull back, but this feels like we've gone a little bit too far back. You know, so right in here, and I would keep some drums or something going through here. And I just want to hear boom, pa, ta, boom, pa. I just want to hear some drums. Yes, and then going into that big halftime. Yeah, I feel like it needs an actual drum set. I like the I like all of the counter melody things we have going on here, but it just feels like it's all getting kind of drowned out. It just feels kind of dark and a little muddy, I guess. I think this is all working. Again, I like the vocals. The string production, all of that is fantastic. Yep, this works. Now, I would be prepared to do a mix or an edit, an alternate version with an ending right there, and the ending with this long coda. Listening to that piano versus that piano, this piano sounds better versus that piano at the beginning. I'm not sure why it's different, or maybe I'm imagining things. So I keep going. If you're listening to the podcast, you're like, what is he doing? I'm going to the top, where that sounds kind of demo-y. And that just feels like it fills it out a little bit more. I don't know if there's some stereo imaging you've done there or what, but I think that's working. Yep. But a really, really nice song. I think it's really good, and I could totally see this working. I totally see this working for like sports broadcasting for sure, or for trailers, or like the closing scene, of a crime procedural drama, and they're like finally like busting through, and like it's a montage of them like catching the bad guy or whatever, and they play these types of songs. So I can absolutely see a home for these. And the idea of Limitless, and it's the lyrics aren't so like specifics, like, it's not necessarily like, this is something that happened in my life that is art, and I want people to relate to me. It's just kind of general lyrically, and I think that is an absolute feature of what you need to have happening for cues like this. So this cue was written and was submitted during our week 31 search. And Caroline, thank you so much for submitting those. We do something every week here at 52 Cues, is that we have searches. And so if this is something that you're interested in, then head over to 52cues.com and why don't you join us? And if you'd like personalized, in-depth video critique on your own cue, kind of like what I did here, where I break down things like form, structure, harmony, the mix, and a ton more, then head over to 52cues.com/coaching and you can get started today. And while you're there, you can check out my other coaching services, including one-on-one Zoom sessions where we can work together towards your career goals in production music. So once again, I want to give a huge shout out to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help keep the lights on here. But you know what? That is going to do it for me today. Be sure to tune in next week where we have to talk about Waves plugins, Waves business model. I'm in the middle of switching over from my old 2014 iMac to a new Mac Studio. It's not installed yet, but this has drudged up my love-hate relationship with Waves plugins. So you definitely want to stick around for that because I don't know, I might be done with Waves. But that's going to do it for me. I hope you had a stellar week, and I know that the universe has amazing things in store for you. But until next time, peace. The 52 Cues podcast is copyright 2022 Dave Croft, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the 52 Cues community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52cues.com.